Her truck broke down in the middle of nowhere, and just as the sun dipped low, a stranger on horseback appeared from the dust. Quiet, rough around the edges, and far too calm. She thought he was just a drifter, until he took down 3 intruders, in the dark with the kind of precision no cowboy should have. And when his secrets came to light, who he really was, it shook the very ground she'd been trying to protect. This isn't just a story about land. It's about redemption, trust, and the kind of love that fights back. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, give the video a like, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's jump into the story. The last thing Leona Marshall expected on a quiet back road was steam shooting from her hood like an angry spirit. She hit the brakes, cursed under her breath, and coasted the truck to the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The sun was starting to dip low, casting long shadows across the dry Wyoming fields. Her phone was dead, of course, and the nearest ranch, her late uncle's place, was still 5 miles off. She popped the hood and stared at the engine like it had personally betrayed her. Need a hand or a miracle? The voice came from behind, smooth and calm. Leona spun around, nearly dropping her wrench. A man sat atop a lean gray horse, still as stone. Dust clung to him like he'd been part of the land itself. Boots scuffed, hat low, shirt faded from sun and wear. His eyes, hidden beneath the brim, studied her without blinking. "Depends on who's offering," she said, tightening her grip on the wrench. He gave a half smile. "No miracles on me today, but I'm decent with engines." Leona hesitated. Everything about him screamed stranger danger, but the road was empty. The air was cooling fast, and night out here wasn't kind to the unprepared. She stepped back and gestured toward the truck. "Be my guest." He dismounted with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, set his saddlebag down and pulled out a rag. He leaned over the engine like he wasn't in any hurry, like this wasn't odd at all. Leona crossed her arms, watching. "You got a name, cowboy?" "Dane," he said without looking up. "Just Dane?" "That's what I go by." She didn't like vague answers, but his hands moved with quiet confidence. Checking. Belts, hoses tapping gently here and there. "Your radiator's busted," he said after a while. "This thing's not going anywhere without a tow." Leona sighed. "There's a trailer at the ranch. If you help me hitch it up, I'll feed you dinner." He nodded once. "Deal." It took the better part of an hour to load the essentials into his saddlebags and get the truck hitched. At first, she walked beside the horse. Dane said nothing. His silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was just settled, like he'd grown used to it. After a mile, he stopped. "Ride," he said simply. Leona blinked. "What?" "You're limping. Get on." "It's fine." She didn't argue. The night was coming fast, and coyotes had started howling in the distance. She climbed up awkwardly behind him, gripping the saddle. The horse moved steady beneath them, and despite herself, Leona relaxed just a little. The ranch came into view as the last of the daylight slipped behind the hills. The porch light glowed warm, the wooden sign swaying slightly. Marshall Ridge, West 1982. It was her uncle's place, now hers, barely held together by duct tape and willpower. Dane guided the horse to the barn and began unloading without a word. Leona followed. "You handy with tools?" she asked, pulling off her gloves. "Depends. On the job. I've got a busted gate, leaky roof, and a list longer than my arm." He glanced at her. "I'll stay a few days, help out, then I'll move on." "Works for me." Later that night, Leona set a plate of beans, cornbread, and fried potatoes on the table. Dane sat across from her, freshly washed but still wearing the same clothes. He ate with quiet appreciation, never asking for more, never commenting on the food. Just eating like it mattered. "You live nearby?" she asked. He shook his head. "Nowhere nearby. Just drifting." He met her eyes. "Just looking for peace." She didn't push further. Something in his voice stopped her cold. Not sadness exactly, but the kind of weight you don't talk about unless someone earns it. After dinner, Dane offered to check the barn doors before bed. Leona stayed behind to wash up, but a sharp bang, Outside sent her bolting for the rifle by the door. The horses were panicking. She raced into the dark. 2 figures, no, 3, shadows darting through the barn, one already inside. Another crash, the sound of fists, a grunt, and then Dane. He moved like water, not like a cowboy. No panic, no flailing. One attacker lunged and was sent flying into a post. Another swung a pipe. Dane dodged, twisted, and took him down with a single clean hit. The third ran before she even raised the rifle. When it was quiet again, Dane was checking the horses, calm as ever. "You okay?" she asked, breathless. "Better question for them," he replied, nodding at the groaning men. She stared at him. "Who are you?" He looked up, still as the moment she met him. "Just Dane." But this time she didn't believe him. The morning after the fight in the barn, Leona didn't sleep much. She poured herself a strong cup of coffee and stood at the window, watching the fields. Dane was already outside, sleeves rolled, hammer in hand, repairing the broken latch like nothing strange had happened the night before. Most men would have packed their bags and left without a word. Not him. That unsettled her, more than the fight itself. Grady, her uncle's old ranch hand, showed up just after sunrise. His knees were bad, but he still worked half the fence line each week and never missed a chance to say exactly what was on his mind. "Who's that?" he asked, squinting at Dane through the dust. "A drifter," Leona said, not looking away. Grady huffed. "Drifters don't move like that. Saw the way he handled those fellas last night. He ain't just muscle. Maybe he's done a few bar fights," she offered weakly. "Or maybe he's done more than that," Grady replied, giving her a look. "You might want to keep both eyes open." Leona knew he meant well, but his words stuck. The truth was, she had questions. Big ones, but she also had a ranch falling apart and no help to fix it. And Dane, he worked like someone trying to pay off a debt no one had asked for. By mid-morning, Dane had patched 2 broken stall doors and reinforced the feed shed hinges. His silence was steady, never cold, and Leona found herself watching him from the porch steps, paperwork in her lap forgotten. He moved with purpose, every nail driven with care. Most men cursed their way through repairs. Dane didn't curse, didn't brag, didn't even sigh, he just worked. And it made her curious in a way that scared her. "Thanks for last night," she said, as he set down the hammer. He looked up, sweat glistening along his brow. "Not a problem. You ever learn how to fight like that from fixing barns?" He gave a small shrug. "Learned a lot of things in a lot of places." She crossed her arms. "That's not much of an answer. It's the only one I've got." That was how he always talked. Just enough to keep her guessing. No more. Before she could press him, a truck rolled up the drive. New. Clean. Too clean for this part of the world. Leona stiffened as it parked, dust kicking up around the tires. The driver's door opened and out stepped Marshall Jaron. Tall, polished, and far too pleased with himself, Marshall looked like he'd walked straight out of a glossy real estate ad and into the wrong county. He adjusted his sunglasses and smiled like the land belonged to him already. "Leona," he said, smooth as oil. "Heard you had trouble with your truck. Figured I'd check in." "Bit late for that," she replied, jaw tight. "Someone already helped." His eyes slid to Dane, who leaned against the fence post, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "Friend of yours?" Marshall asked. Leona stood straighter. "He's helping out around the ranch." "Lucky you," Marshall said, but his smile had thinned. Dane didn't speak. He didn't need to. The air between him and Marshall thickened like a storm rolling in. "Look, I know things have been tight since your uncle passed," Marshall said, stepping closer. "And with all this land, it's a lot to manage alone." "I'm not selling," Leona said sharply. "Just think about it," he said, tone dropping. "I'm offering more than anyone else will." "And taking more than anyone else has," she shot back. Marshall's smile vanished for a split second. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Next time I might not come asking so politely." That's when Dane moved. He stepped off the porch, calm but sure. His eyes locked on Marshall. "You should leave now," he said, quiet and firm. Marshall blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard him," Leona said, crossing her arms. Marshall laughed once, low and cold. "You two are a real pair. Good luck keeping this place above water." He turned, climbed into his truck, and spun gravel as he left. Leona exhaled slowly. "You all right?" Dane asked, watching her closely. She nodded, but her fists were clenched. "He's not going to stop." "Then neither will I," Dane said. That night, Leona checked every lock twice. The horses were restless, ears twitching at the wind. She sat on the edge of her bed, the memory of Marshall's voice playing on repeat in her head. Dane, meanwhile, sat in the barn, quiet, whittling a piece of old wood, his eyes drifting now and then to the shadows near the door. Around midnight, he climbed the ladder to the loft, looking for spare rope. Instead, he found a box, old, rusted, and tucked beneath a pile of burlap. It had metal corners, a worn latch, and inside, maps, deeds, letters, a name stamped across several of them. Calder Grant. Dane froze. He hadn't heard that name in years. He reached for one of the documents with careful fingers, heart pounding. From below, Leona's voice echoed up. "Everything all right?" Dane tucked the papers away and climbed down slowly. "Just checking the roof," he called back. But the box sat heavy in the loft above, like a truth waiting to be found. Leona stood at the edge of the pasture the next morning, arms folded tight across her chest. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, though the forecast had promised sun. She watched Dane walk the fence line with steady steps, his hand brushing across the top wire, eyes always moving, always checking. He didn't know she'd seen the box. Not yet. She'd gone into the loft late the night before, curious about a strange draft coming from the far corner. The box had been easy to find after that. What was inside had been harder to accept. Deeds, maps, legal letters. The name Calder Grant marked on nearly everything, a name she hadn't heard since college. He was a ghost story in ranching circles, a man who'd bought up land fast, built an empire, and then disappeared after a scandal that no one ever fully understood. Most said he went broke. Some said he ran after someone close to him died. Others whispered about secret buyouts and fake deaths. But now she knew at least one thing for sure. Calder Grant hadn't disappeared. He'd changed his name. To Dane. She waited until the chores were done and lunch was cleared before saying anything. They sat on the porch, boots dusty, a soft wind rolling through the grass. Dane sipped coffee like it was any other day. She watched him for a long moment before speaking. "I found it." He didn't pretend not to understand. His hand froze mid-sip. Then slowly he set the mug down. "I figured you would," he said quietly. "You lied to me." He shook his head. "I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you everything. You let me believe you were a drifter. Some guy with an old horse and a knack for tools. Not the man who once owned half the state." He met her eyes. "Because that man broke everything he built." She blinked, caught off guard by the softness in his voice. "I lost someone," he continued, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I thought building things would give me purpose. Land, businesses, deals. But when she died, all of it felt empty, like I'd been building for nothing." Leona didn't speak. The wind tugged at her hair. A hawk circled far above. "So I walked away," he said. "Not just from the money. From all of it. I needed to be someone else. Just for a while." She looked down at her hands. "You should have told me. I was afraid if you knew who I'd been, you'd stop seeing who I was trying to become." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, "You fixed my barn, my fences. You protected my horses without being asked. I don't care about your name, Dane. I care that I trusted you. And I didn't know who I was trusting." His voice was low. "I want to earn that back if you'll let me." She didn't answer right away. Then, with a nod so small it might have been missed, she stood up and said, "Marshall won't stop. We both know that." He stood too. "Then, we fight." Over the next few days, the rhythm of the ranch changed. Dane was still quiet, still steady, but something had shifted. He was more focused, more careful. At night, he stayed up late reviewing documents from the box. In the morning, he made calls from the old landline. Grady noticed. "Your mystery man's been busy," he said one morning, watching Dane walk out of the barn with a thick folder under one arm. "He's got a plan," Leona replied. Grady raised an eyebrow. "Hope it's a good one, because trouble's coming," and it came faster than they expected. That evening, a fire broke out near the far paddock. Leona smelled smoke just as Dane burst through the kitchen door. "Grab the hose," he yelled. They sprinted out into the field where a small pile of hay had been lit. A foal had broken its stall in panic. Dane ran to catch it, dodging flames and calming the animal with a soft voice that didn't match the chaos. By the time the fire was out, his shirt was scorched, and his arm was bleeding from a deep scrape. Leona grabbed a rag and pressed it against the wound. This wasn't random. "No," he said. It was a message. Later that night, they sat together in the barn. Dane's arm was bandaged. Leona leaned against the wall beside him, heart still pounding from the fire. Marshall's pushing. "Harder," she whispered. "Because he's scared." She looked at him. "Why?" Dane handed her the folder he'd been carrying for days. Inside were maps of the town, records of land purchases, and a list of names. People who'd been pressured, threatened, or bought out. "He's building something big," Dane said, "but not legally, not cleanly. So what do? We stop him the way he tried to build it, quietly, then loudly." 3 days later, the town meeting hall was full for the first time in years. Dane stood at the front, maps behind him, folder open. He didn't wear a suit or speak like a businessman. He spoke like someone who'd been silent for too long. "Marshall Guerin isn't just buying land," he told the room. "He's breaking people down to do it, and it stops now." He passed out paperwork, evidence, filings, proof of wrongdoing. He promised to fund legal protection for anyone who needed it. All he asked was for them to stand together, and one by one they did. The wind carried the smell of dust and tension across the hills. It was just past midnight when Leona heard the engines. 3 trucks rolled slow and heavy down the dirt road, headlights cutting through the dark like knives. Dane stood in the barn doorway, shotgun resting in his arms. His eyes didn't flinch. He'd been waiting. He always knew it would end like this. "They're here," he said. Leona grabbed the flashlight and the walkie from the hook near the door. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. "You think Marshall came himself?" she asked. "He has to," Dane replied. "We've taken away his last option." They moved through the shadows toward the edge of the pasture. The first truck skidded to a stop. Men jumped out. 3, maybe 4. Flashlights scanned the barn, the house, the corral, and then Marshall Guerin stepped out. His smile was thin. His coat too clean for a place like this. He looked around like he still owned the valley. "Dane," he called out, "let's not pretend you're in charge here." Dane stepped into view, calm and alone. "I'm not pretending," he said. "I'm protecting what's not yours." Marshall walked forward, boots crunching on gravel. "This little stunt of yours, getting the town on your side, filing paperwork, it won't hold. People like me don't lose." "You already did," Dane said. Sirens rang in the distance, growing louder. Marshall's face twisted. "You called the sheriff?" "No," Dane said. "She did." Leona appeared behind Marshall, rifle slung low but ready. Her voice cut through the dark like a blade. "Back away, Marshall." Marshall spun, furious. "You really think this will stop me?" He lunged forward, and that's when it happened. A single gunshot cracked the night. Marshall dropped to one knee, clutching his side. His men scattered into the dark. The sheriff's cruisers arrived seconds later. Red and blue lights washed over the barn as deputies swarmed the scene. Marshall was arrested without a fight. He didn't even argue. Not with the documents, the witnesses, or the wound that would remind him he pushed too far. By dawn, the danger had passed. But something deeper had settled in the air. Relief, yes, but also something gentler. A stillness they hadn't felt in weeks. The next few days passed in a blur. Legal filings moved forward. The ranch stayed quiet. But Dane moved slower now, not because of pain, but purpose. Like every step mattered. Leona saw it in the way he watched the horses graze, in the way he lingered near the back fence at sunset, not to fix anything, but just to be. She joined him one evening near the old corral. The sun had dipped low, setting the sky in soft streaks of orange and pink. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" He turned toward her. "Used to believe I was built for deals, buildings, projects. I thought if I made something big enough, loud enough, it would matter." "And now?" He smiled, soft and tired. "Now I just want to build something quiet, something that lasts." Leona pulled something from her pocket, a small folded note. "Grady left this before heading south for the season. Said he didn't have much to give, but he wrote this for you." Dane opened it. In Grady's crooked handwriting it read, "You're not a drifter if you stay." Dane looked up, eyes shining. "He doesn't say much." He said what mattered. They sat for a while longer, the horses snorting softly nearby. Then Dane reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet, not new. Just simple, worn, and quietly important. He opened it to reveal a silver ring, no gems, no flash, just a faint engraving on the inside. "Stay when you're ready." Leona's eyes filled with tears. "Your uncle used to say the land doesn't care how much you own, only how much you give back," Dane said. "I've spent a long time running from who I was. I don't want to run anymore." He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. "I'm not asking for forever," he said. "Just tomorrow, and then the next." Leona laughed through the tears. "You're terrible at speeches." He grinned. "I know. But yeah," she said, reaching for the ring. "Tomorrow sounds good." 1 year later, the sign at the front of the ranch read, "Grant Ridge, where quiet things grow strong." The land was greener than it had been in decades. Wildflowers grew where fire once tried to take hold. Horses grazed calmly. Children's laughter echoed from the barn. The ranch had become more than a home. It had become a haven. Dane once called her. Grant never put his name on the legal papers. He didn't need credit. He just worked the land, helped train the horses, and made sure the fences stayed strong. Leona, now Leona Grant, carried a different strength too. One built not on surviving, alone, but choosing to let someone in. On the porch, a sleeping baby was tucked against her chest. Their daughter had her father's quiet eyes and her mother's will. Dane walked up the path from the barn, mud on his boots and a smile on his face. "She's out cold again," he said. "Like her dad after fence duty," Leona teased. They stood under the golden morning sky, hands wrapped together. "You think your old self would have believed this?" she asked. Dane looked around. At the land, at her, at their daughter. "Not for a second," he said. "And now?" He smiled. "Now I can't imagine anything else." They walked slowly toward the pasture, hearts full, fences strong, and a future finally built not on what they'd lost, but what they chose to keep.